Hi, I'm Andrea Klim, and you're watching Turn to the Stars, and today is February 10th, 2020. And I thought it might be a really good idea to share some research with you that I've been collecting for some time in regards to our Earth and our evolution on Earth right now. And what I wanted to talk to you about is the changing of the age from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. And what I wanted to really emphasize that this is a very important time on this planet as we're moving out from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, but we're at the end of a 24,000 year precessional cycle and the beginning of a new one. And this video is very important. And I've talked about this in previous videos, just a little bit. And I thought it'd be a really good idea, though, to really bring some of this information all into one. And many people on Earth right now are talking about this time, that it's such a transitional time. And with every single chart that I do, every single reading that I do, people are wanting to know, why is it that I'm experiencing this in such an intense way? And so, we're all looking at the root of some really deep-seated emotional patterns that we've experienced. And the Age of Aquarius brings us to look at these things as we enter toward it, as we move toward it. Pisces is extreme sensitivity, very deep. And as we move through to the Age of Aquarius, it's time to look at shedding these emotions or finding some peace and healing with these emotions. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about today, is this transitional time on our planet. And I wanted to go into depth about the profound meaning of the 24,000 year precessional cycle that we're moving through, that the planet moves through over and over again. And there's a lot of evidence that at the end of a precessional cycle and the beginning of a new one, which is where we're at right now and midway through the precessional cycle. So in other words, every 12,000 years or so, we go through a very important shift and the earth changes, and culturally we go through changes, and we go through changes in consciousness. And there's a lot of scientific evidence that's been unveiled through exploring geological evidence on Earth, that there's a lot of exploration that's been done by NASA, exploring material on the moon that proves that every 12,000 years we have experienced a huge solar event in our solar system. And this means that if there's an eruption of a solar flare or a nova, it affects everything in our solar system. And it tends to trigger a major cataclysmic change on our Earth home. And we see this about every 12,000 years. In about 9600 BCE, we went through the ending of the last ice age, and it was a really profound time on Earth. And there's some that believe that this was triggered by comet activity, but there's increasing sense that it was related to a pole shift or to a solar event that led to a massive solar eruption of energy that caused a rapid increase in the temperature on the Earth. And this triggers shifts in the Earth's crust, massive flooding, and there's evidence from around the world and from geological investigations that show that it basically wiped out the civilization on the Earth, and that there was really mass extinction of plant and animal life. And right now, we're at the end of a 24,000 year precessional cycle and the beginning of a new one. And there is evidence that we're approaching another major event like this. And there is some scientific research that indicates that this is due to a weakening of the magnetic field around the Earth, and that this is setting the stage for a shifting and big changes on the Earth. And there's an understanding that we might, go through some massive shifts. And we're also moving through a part of the galaxy that is causing increasing exposure to energy, not only from just the sun, but from the galactic center. And just recently in a video I did, I talked about, when Jupiter and Mercury and the sun were at the center of the galactic, at the very center of the galactic center, meaning right in the midst of that. And that is a really important time. And we've just come through that. And presently, as I speak, Mars is there. And so that's been causing some major storms on Earth and in our solar system. And this energy is really affecting us here on Earth. And so there's some important facts that we're facing during these climate changes and Earth changes because of where we are moving through the galaxy and because of our relationship with the sun's energy and the galactic center energies. And it doesn't mean that we aren't also responsible as humans, because we are. We play a big part in what the effects are that are happening to us here on Earth. From things that we've done to our atmosphere, to our environment, to our oceans, and everything else on the Earth. But basically, we're approaching a time where the Earth will be reset. This is what the research is that so many are coming to a conclusion of. And so it's going to be a time of transformation, and how we respond and how we choose to act and what we do will dramatically influence how this transformation occurs. So one of the things that I think is really important is that these shifts every 12,000 years are, preceded by, marked by, an orbit by Sedna. And that's a planet that was discovered in 2003 that has an 11,400 year orbit. And she has such a long elliptical orbit that she moves to the farthest ends of our solar system. And then she circles back and she comes in close to our solar system for a number of years. And then she cycles back out. But it seems that there's evidence that when Sedna moves into our solar system, she's alerting us that we're about to move through a transformational time again. So wanted to talk more about this today. And, I've been studying some of the deeper meaning of Sedna, who was named after the Inuit's goddess of the sea. And because of the story of Sedna, this guides us, this energy guides us, and it kind of gives us a precursor of how we're meant to shift our consciousness in this time of change. But for right now, let's just say that she is the messenger who is alerting us that it's time for transition, it's time for change, it's time for transformation. And so we're moving through this really important period, and we're really questioning, what does this mean? And how are we supposed to respond? there are some things that are also really important to know. And it is that the wisdom that is coming to each and every one of us is also much more ancient and comes from ancient advanced cultures throughout the wisdom and mythology of time. And there's this amazing astronomical marker in places around the world. And it's as if these ancient cultures were trying to tell us that these cycles occur and that they wanted to remind us so that we could remember and be working on a level of understanding these transitional times of transformation. And if we explore, we can see that ancient Egyptians were very aware of the precessional cycle, which we understand the precessional cycle in that from our Earth perspective, it appears as if the fixed stars move backwards from our Earth perspective, 1 degree every 72 years. And this means that if we're tracking stars and just before sunrise and the time of the spring equinox, over about a 2,000-year period, it will shift from one constellation in the zodiac to the next. That's the meaning of our experiencing now being in that shift from the stars of Pisces rising before the spring equinox to the movement into the stars of Aquarius rising before the spring equinox. So ancient cultures were very aware that we were in this transitioning time from one age to the next. And they saw markers in the sky that were more important, that did not move with the precession cycle. So especially the Egyptians worked with an orientation to the brightest star in our sky, Sirius. And we see that the Queen's chambers and their greatest pyramid was in alignment with one of her star shafts with the star Sirius, and that there was the Great Pyramid, was where the Great Pyramid was built thousands of years ago, and it's still there. So Sirius has not shifted with the movement of the precessional cycle. And this may be because there's this increasing understanding that our sun, like most stars in the galaxy, is mostly likely a part of a binary star system, which means the sun is orbiting around another star, and that not the tilt of the Earth's axis is what's likely to lead our movement to cause the sense of the precession cycle of the sky, moving 1 degree every 72 years from our Earth perspective. So essentially our sun is most likely in a binary star system, as are 80% of the stars, and it's most likely Sirius. The Mayans also were very oriented towards Sirius, but they also realized that the Pleiades are another really stable marker in their timekeeping. They were also very tuned into the stars of the Pleiades, and there's this increasing understanding that our sun orbits around Sirius, and Sirius most likely orbits around the brightest stars in the Pleiades. And we as a whole are moving in relationship with the galactic center. And the meaning of that profound date of December 21st, 2012 was when our solar system went into alignment with the galactic center. And this only happens every 24,000 years, and the Mayans had tracked this on their long count calendar to end at that date. So all of this information begins to fit together. the ways in which the Egyptians and the Mayans track time and track their calendars, the myths and the stories from ancient cultures that talked about the meaning of going through this cycle, the changes that this brings, and the record that we're in stone, that are in stone monuments around the world and on every continent, in Europe, Africa, South America, Australia, China, all over the world. And so it's as if these ancient cultures were telling us, remember, this is what happens, and be prepared, get prepared, be a part of the change process, because this whole understanding of the precessional cycle and these major periods every 12,000 years of change also aligns with our increasing understanding of the Yuga cycle coming out of the ancient texts in India. These describe the cycles of change that the earth goes through and that we go through in our human consciousness and evolution. And what's really important in our understanding of the Yuga cycle, again, is the complete cycle is 24,000 years, with 12,000 years of that cycle being what's called the descending cycle. 12,000 years is the descending cycle. And so we have to say, what does that mean? It means that the cycle has different phases to it. There's a cycle known as the Golden Age. That is the time of our highest level of consciousness. And then we move into the Silver Age, which is a time of diminishing understanding and consciousness. And then into the Bronze Age, and then into the Iron Age, or the Yuga cycle, or in what the Yuga cycle was called the Kali Yuga, which is the phase that we've been in for the last 6,000 years. This phase is known as the Age of Forgetting. When we move into the darkest time in our consciousness, we lose connection with that larger sense of our place in the cosmos. We move from an understanding of truth and aligning with the energy of the universe to get caught in our own egos and caught in darkness, and in our behavior and in our understanding of our level of consciousness. And we certainly see signs of that all over the earth right now, ways in which there's less and less interest in what's true versus what illusion or picture I project, or what propaganda I can put out. There's more and more reactivity, people operating and coming from a place of fear and anger. And there's a desire for pursuing each person's own profit or own gain, no matter what impact it has on anyone else or on the planet. So, in essence, it's like we've explored the darkest side of our consciousness, and we're at the end of that age, and that's the Iron Age. We're at the end of what is called the Kali Yuga, and many of us, and in this, you know, I see this, and like I said earlier at the beginning of the video, in all of my readings, with so many people on Earth. And it's really, you know, we really can realize that we're waking up, that we're on the cusp, not only of the movement into the Age of Aquarius, but into the next stage of an increasing consciousness, awakening. We're remembering what we have forgot. We're beginning to remember that we're part of a whole, we're part of a larger cycle. And we are moving into a higher consciousness and into new ways of being that are much more based on justice, wholeness, on truth, and being together, aligning with our soul families, aligning with the energy of the cosmic consciousness. So this is an important time of transformation, as I said earlier, that we're in currently. And I believe that, you know, I've talked about this in the past, in past shows, that, you know, I truly believe that if we open to this higher level of understanding of oneness, that these planetary influences of this larger precessional cycle, which is calling us to shift on the earth in a way that is healing instead of, my point is, instead of this being a cataclysmic reset, it can be an important time of transformation and healing, and for all of us, in creating a whole new world together with the earth, with our surrounding planets. And it's really an extraordinary time. And it really is a critical time of choice. So it's extraordinary that, you know, as I talked about earlier, that we're at the end of the Kali Yuga. The end of the Iron Age will be exactly in 2025, shortly after Pluto goes into Aquarius fully, which is in November of 2024. And I see that as a marker in our movement all together collectively into the Age of Aquarius. And it's kind of interesting because Queen Elizabeth, the daughter who was the most loved queen of England, was queen when Pluto was in Aquarius, and that was actually called a golden age. But this is even more profound. And it is, again, a time where Pluto is entering into the age of Aquarius. So we've crossed a threshold into the age of Aquarius at this time. And the Kali Yuga, the age of forgetting, of being in the dark, comes to an end. And there's a 300-year transition period as we move into the next age in the cycle. So we're in a critical time right now until 2025, and then we move into that transition period, and it's in this transition period that the earth changes and resets in consciousness. And I really believe that if enough of us work on shedding this working on our emotional patterns and waking and raising our consciousness, that we can, even if it's a small number of people on this planet, we can shift the consciousness of the globe in a way that supports us to move through this time of transition in a more graceful way. And I know that many of us, and there's lots of people that are talking about the third dimension and moving through that to the fourth dimension and into the fifth. And I believe that is actually happening simultaneously. And the third dimension is the dimension of polarity. It is, again, the dimension of the exploration of our separation and our exploration of these lower aspects of our human consciousness. And as we move through the fourth dimension, we're really having to face our thoughts, our beliefs, and our emotions. And I believe that's where we're at right now. It's a time for all of us to look to methods and ways that we can heal. And, you know, it's time that we clear the trauma in our lives And that will help in clearing the collective consciousness and making us lighter as we prepare to move into the fifth dimension. And the fifth dimension is about living from a place of love and from a higher consciousness of accepting and moving beyond polarity into a sense of oneness with each other, with the world that surrounds us, and with all that is. But we can't move into that higher consciousness with all this emotional baggage that we're carrying from the past, or being blocked by our negative beliefs and thoughts. It's time to clear these thoughts and beliefs. It's time to heal from the pains of our past so that we can open our hearts to the energies of the light that's coming to each of us from the sun, and from the galactic center, and from the cosmos, and from the beings of the light. And this takes us through this important time of transformation. And I believe that we will become beings of light also. And I think there's a piece of that in each and every one of us. And that we can integrate our bodies with this shift into the fifth dimension and move with the earth into a place of transformation and healing and into a completely new world. You know, this isn't a new world that we get to see and use tools from the third dimension. We're seeing all around us futility of that. The key is to really heal and open to a new way of consciousness. And I really believe that advanced civilizations from the past were trying to guide us to remember this larger cycle through their history and the things that they left behind, so that we can move through this time in a way that would be profoundly healing for all of us here on this earth. And it is important that we realize that we have a choice. And if we stay locked into third dimensional consciousness and stay caught in the polarity of this time, which is so intense everywhere as we look around the globe, if we stay caught in that, then we will go through. It is believed that we'll go through a cataclysmic reset with the earth and with our experience of humanity. But if we can heal and open to a deeper meaning around this time and a profound transformational viewpoint that supports us and guides us, we can move into what so many of the prophecies talk about as the golden age, as a time of increased consciousness, where we live from the heart, where we live from love, where we live in oneness, and we're reminded that we are all one, that we're all connected by the light of spirit, and that this can be a time of harmony and imbalance with all that is. So how can we open up our hearts to these new thoughts? And one of the things that I realize is that we need to step out of the consensual reality of our time, which is that history is linear, that history has a tendency to repeat itself, that the modern civilization that we are now in started from the cradle in Mesopotamia 5,000 years ago, and that the humans prior to that were just primitive hunters and gatherers. Anyone who has traveled the world, there's so much research and there's so much information out there from people that have traveled the world, from some of these ancient sites, that this is completely not true. We see and we're told, and there's stories and evidence of ancient sites around the world that show a level of understanding of technology, of math, of astronomy that is actually beyond our comprehension. So I think it's really important that we step out of the understanding that history repeats itself. And remember that we're part of these cycles that take place on the earth and in human consciousness, and that we need to let go of other false beliefs that our sun is a solar is solely alone with our solar system moving around in terms of our cosmology, to realize our sun is a part of a binary star system. It moves and evolves in relationship with another star. And how amazing that star is, most likely Sirius, identified with the ancient Egyptian goddess Isis, who was deemed the Great Mother. So our sun circles the Great Mother, and together they circle other star systems and the galactic center, the center of all that is, and it shifts our cosmology out of the sense of separation, idealization of individuation. It calls us back into relationship. It calls us back into an understanding of the connectedness of all of us. And again, we need to really focus on healing. It's so important because it changes our beingness. It changes our consciousness, and we become lighter. We come into alignment with our soul selves, and we can remember, and we can open ourselves to powerful energies that are coming to us to help us to move into this consciousness. And so we really do need to heal individually. We need to heal as a whole, collectively. And it's, you know, there's many different books and articles out that mention that we as a collective carry PTSD from our cellular memories of traumatic occurrences in the past, and that we're bringing, and that if we choose to bring that consciousness that we're a part of that cycle, then this is how it, you know, as it played out in the past, then that repressed trauma is setting us up for, you know, experiencing the very same thing, the very same fears, just as we do with our individual trauma patterns. So we really need to, as a whole, collectively, individually, collectively, and as whole, remember the cycles of history and of shifting consciousness so that we can deal with this time of awakening, of awareness, and participate in making this a time to heal, to transform, to move into a higher consciousness, and to create this new world together. And so I'm also going to encourage you to connect with the energies of Sedna as she's moving through the stars of Taurus. Taurus is a very loving, very strong, very stable sign of security. And to connect with the energy of the Pleiades and with a bright star, that bright star Sirius that we've been talking about, which is most likely our binary star, to connect with the energy of the galactic center, to align with the energies that are guiding us through this time of healing, change, transformation. And something that you can do every morning is, as the sun rises, you can close your eyes and just turn your face to the sun and align with the energy of that source, of the galactic center, connecting yourself to this energy, to this light, aligning your soul with this cosmic consciousness, gathering this light energy is all going to be helpful in shifting to a higher consciousness. And so I wanted to just remind you that we're all really a part of the whole, and we're all experiencing these cycles of change moving forward, and that the cycles of the past are very important for us to heal so that we can open ourselves to unity. And with that said, I want to thank each and every one of you for watching and supporting Turn to the Stars. And just remind you that if you're looking for some help and guidance on your path in healing some of your old emotional patterns, I am open to, I'd love to hear from you. And you can reach me by going to turntothestars.com and scheduling an appointment there, contacting me in that way. I'm Andrea at Turn to the Stars email, and my phone number is 603-490-6253. I can be contacted in either of those ways to set up appointments. And so I just want to say thank you for tuning in, and remember, turn to the stars and you'll find your answers there. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time.